one or other of us is doing. And it gives our team other issues too. We now have way more work in progress. Because of that, each story takes longer to complete because there's only one person working on it, so it goes on for a longer amount of time. And each team member has their own set of stories. And if each team member has their own area of speciality that only they know about, it brings us other issues regarding resiliency. What happens if that one team member wins a lottery, quits the next day, goes on vacation for 2 weeks? Or maybe they just call in ill one day. All of these things interrupt our ability to provide value to our customers in a timely fashion. But I'm supposed to be talking about pair programming, and I've not mentioned that yet. So why do I think these are connected? Well, I believe that one way that we can help teams not to fall into that trap of being independent colleagues at the same island of desks is to pair program. When we do it right, we work together, really together, to think of better solutions, to get that better collaboration, and to implement them with less lead time for our users. Hi, I'm Stacy Cashmore. I've been a developer since the mid-1990s. I'm Tech Explorer DevOps for OmniPlan in Amsterdam, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. Since I started coding in the mid-90s, I have worked in various different industries, companies, and roles. And throughout my career, I have seen lots of different ways that teams work together. Some of them have been better than others. But if I say that pair programming can solve issues here, if it's so great, why aren't we all doing it? Why isn't it just this default thing? Well, there's a few things which, if they happen, they make pairing less than great. And I want to talk about the most common ones today. I'm going to start off with sleepy pairing. Now, if you've ever tried pairing, I'm sure that we've seen this. 2 or more people sitting behind one computer, one of them at the keyboard, feverishly working away, working through the problem, coming up with the solution, fighting that solution when it doesn't quite work. They turn that into code and they put it into computer. Then you got other people. Maybe you got a person sitting just behind the person at the keyboard, looking over their shoulder, silently, making that person at the keyboard feel really, really uncomfortable. Or, other one I've experienced, you've got a person sitting about a meter or so away. They're playing with their phone. Occasionally, they'll look up at the screen, try and catch up with what I'm doing, and then go, yeah, before returning to Facebook, Twitter, shooting zombies in an MMO game on their phone. And I liken this to a long car journey. You've got the driver concentrating the whole day, looking for traffic problems, figuring out which way they need to go, watching the road, trying to keep everybody safe. You got passengers, they're just struggling to stay awake. Maybe you've got that backseat driver staring at the driver, making them feel really uncomfortable. Maybe you got the person staring out of the window, watching the world go by. Or if you've got somebody lucky enough not to have motion sickness, maybe they're just watching Netflix on their phone until the battery gives up. At the end of the journey, the driver gets out, stretches, walks inside, and just hopes there's somewhere to recuperate. They're exhausted. They've been concentrating so long. Got a headache. All they want to do is just close their eyes. Passengers, well, they're exhausted too. But it's more from boredom than anything else. And so it is with our developers and sleepy pairing. That person doing the heavy lifting, they're more tired than they normally would have been. They have had exactly the same workload. Only now they've had somebody watching every single key press, making them feel bad, but not really helping them. You've got a person watching, exhausted, over the shoulder. Don't underestimate how tiring it can be to concentrate on somebody else coding the whole day. They've got this nagging feeling that they've not been doing what they should have been. Or that person a meter away, they have an awesome score on that zombie MMO game. They've also got this gnawing feeling they should have been more used. This isn't what they're paid to do. Either one of them feels useless. And so the next day, everybody returns to their own machines. They put on their noise-cancelling headphones to drown out the open plan office when we're allowed there, and they go back to working independently. Previous day was a complete waste, and you know what? So is pair programming. It's not only the navigator that can fall into sleepy pairing, though. It can also be the driver, and the results are just as bad if this happens. And I've seen this happen often when pairs start to use the driver and navigator roles more explicitly. We have the driver. They are at the keyboard entering the code. The navigator solving the problem, telling the driver what to do. Now, doing this brings us immediate benefits because that sleepy person watching, well, they can't. Neither the yuppie nor the zombie killer can do either of these things because if they're not actively involved, then the driver can't drive. They are working together to solve problems now. The navigator coming up with ideas, figuring out how to solve problems. The driver listening to the solution and then creating that solution at the keyboard. It sounds idyllic. This is what we want from pairing. People around the typist are actively involved now. No more yupping, no more zombies. Only I'm not so sure. See, in this situation, quite often, I have seen that there is a zombie. It's just not the one in that phone game. It's the typist. And I'm using that word deliberately. Typist. Sitting, banging in the words at the keyboard, doing everything that navigator tells them, typing exactly what the navigator tells them to type. But while they're doing this, they're not thinking about what they're supposed to type into the computer. Have you ever seen stories about drivers using satellite navigation, ending up at the wrong destination? They take everything that that system says and they do it without thinking. They end up lost in the middle of a field. In the worst cases, stuck between narrow buildings, in water, even in the wrong country. Navigation system says, you have arrived. The driver thinks, well, yeah, maybe, but where have I arrived? How did I get here and why are my feet wet? And with our pair at the end of the day, that person doing the thinking is now exhausted because they've been doing all of the work, waiting for the driver to put their code into the computer, but being held up because that driver is not using all the shortcuts that they know, but they can't carry on thinking about the solution because then they're going to get lost with where the driver is now. And the typist, bashing keys with no thought for what they're doing. They're also exhausted. Yesterday, our typist was doing all of the heavy lifting alone. Now they're exhausted thinking, well, I didn't become a developer just to put somebody else's code into my computer. I'm not including Stack Overflow here, of course. So the next day, we return to their own machines, put on noise-cancelling headphones, drown out that open plan office, go back to working independently, feeling the previous day was a waste. And you know what? Except for really complex problems where we need two people, so is pairing in general. Now, these two issues, the sleepy navigator, the sleepy driver, I've noticed teams can find it really hard to get through here. You can hit these and it's like a barrier that stops you and you can give up before you make that breakthrough. And it's also used as some of the biggest reasons that I've seen with companies, with teams, with developers, to say that pair programming just simply can't work. It's not worth it to give up before we start. But there are things that we can do to help these situations and to make pairing pay dividends, not pay dividends on the effort that it takes to get it going. Let's tackle the Sleepy Navigator first. When we started looking at this, we noticed that the world is full of distractions. You know what? This is a big one. Our phones. Most of us are addicted to our phones. I know that I am. They provide a world for us. Email, Slack, Teams, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp. And if we're not busy typing, it's so easy to allow ourselves to be given into these distractions. In fact, normally if I do this talk in person, there's one or two people looking up from their phones rather sheepishly about now. And it took so much mental energy to remove this distraction, because even moving it onto the next desk away from me, all that happened is I stretched to pick up and check it, and then stretched to put it back. Great for the daily workout, not so great for stopping the distraction. Eventually, I just had to toss it onto my desk, which was quite a distance away from where I was pairing. Carefully, glass smartphone, not a Nokia 3210. And it hurt. It felt really awful. I say, I am addicted to my phone. But it worked. After a while, that pain dies down and I could concentrate. I wasn't getting distracted. I realized that none of the things I was checking on my phone, Twitter, WhatsApp, they're not important. It's just FOMO, fear of missing out, and habit. Checking my email, now that one took a bit more time. See, if I'm working at my own machine, I can see if an important email comes in, if someone's got an urgent thing they need answering, if there's a major issue somewhere, if production is on fire and the website's down and I need to do something, I know about it. I don't get these mails when I'm pairing. And it caused stress. But after a while, came to realize that's fine. If something is urgent, somebody's going to find me. They're not going to fire off this email and then forget about it. And if they don't come and find me, it's an indication that this thing, it's not urgent and I can answer it later. So moving to work these distractions, we managed to get into the flow better. We managed to work better as a pair. But we still needed to take care of that sleepy driver. And to do that, we looked at the definitions we had for drivers and navigators and made them a bit more explicit. The navigator, somebody who thinks of a solution and then explains it to the driver. And they do that until the driver understands what they need to do to start writing code. And the driver, somebody who listens to the navigator, somebody who understands what the navigator is saying, and they turn that understanding into the code that we need. To return to our driving metaphor one last time, when you're driving, your job is not to listen to your satellite navigation system and do what it says without thinking. Your job is to listen to those instructions, to think about them, to check they're correct, to make sure it's safe to use them, and to get everybody to the right place. And so it is with our driver in pair programming. It's not somebody who just follows instructions. It's somebody who listens to the navigator, understands what they're trying to achieve, and then turns that into code. And if they don't understand something, you don't code anything. And as a navigator, you need to make sure when this happens that you can explain your idea differently so that you both have a shared understanding of how we're going to solve the problem. What you don't do is simply grab the keyboard and quickly do something. Because as soon as you do that, you're back in sleepy pairing because that other person is doing nothing but watching. And as a driver, don't think you've got it any easier here. You're following the thoughts of your navigator, and all of a sudden something clicks. You know exactly how we need to solve this problem now. And what you don't do is grab the keyboard and start to put your undoubtedly awesome solution into the computer. Rather, you excitedly give your keyboard to the navigator. You tell them your amazing idea and you switch roles. You become the navigator. Because once again, if you start typing your idea, the navigator is going to go back to sleepy pairing instantly. And if we ensure that each person fulfills these roles in this way and we work at it without that distraction that we have from the world around us, making sure that we are listening and understanding the problems we want to solve, then we move from sleepy into strong pairing. And that gives us lots of benefits. I'm going to go through two of them now. First up, collaboration. We now really work together as a team. We're not working on different things anymore. We're working together to solve a problem. We're bouncing ideas between each other. We are helping each other improve technically in our domain, in the way that we come up with solutions. We are solving problems together. We communicate more. We communicate better. Now, this one's a little bit chicken and egg. I honestly don't know if we managed to improve our communication, and so we also managed to improve how we pair programmed, or as we were learning and we improved how we pair programmed, our communication just evolved organically as we did. Either way, our ability to communicate got drastically better. And that means that we were sharing knowledge so much more than we were. And that means that when that person wins a lottery, goes on vacation, is ill, it doesn't give us a huge problem anymore. Because we are pairing, as always, two people with knowledge of this particular problem, each person in the pair. So that remaining person, they can now start a new pair. They can share the knowledge again and continue. We also saw benefits in our onboarding process when we started to do this. You start a new job. You get introduced to 100 people whose names you instantly forget. You get a big stack of paperwork, a desk, a computer, and then you have to learn the system. Figure out all the processes, figure out the code that you're trying to get into, trying to be productive, and it can take an age sometimes. And rather than doing that, why not put your new person with an existing person? Get them to pair together. The newbie gets all of the insights into the system, the domain, the processes from their experienced partner. Their partner gets a clear insight that only someone with no preconceived ideas about a project can have. And more than that, we are productive from day one. Now, I get really enthusiastic about pair programming. And quite often I'm asked, well, why? And when I get asked that question, I like to paraphrase what G. Paul Hill says about test-driven development. I like this because we are in it for the money. My experience is that pairing, when practiced, when done right, it gets value into the hands of our customers quicker. It gets that value there with more thought gone into it, more thought about how it's built, and more thought about the problem and the solution itself. I love pairing with one or with multiple people. I love it because of the benefits that I see that it brings to me as an individual and to the teams that I've worked with. Now, make no mistake, this is hard. It is really hard to do right. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it and I wouldn't be talking about it. But I invite you to give it a go, to put that effort in, to get past those sleepy stages and to see the benefits that it can bring you. I've been Stacy Cashmore. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for your time, Stacy. I'm not sure if you're taking questions.
Sorry?
Are you taking questions?
I'll take questions if we have time.
Okay, we have time for one question. Bob, who asked, how about airplane pilots? No single action is executed without the consent of the second pilot.
That is such an awesome way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, it really is. If we are pair programming and we're doing it right, then there's no code that should go into the computer without that solution going through two people, the person coming up with the idea and the person validating it and putting it into code. And when that person's putting it into code, the person navigating should also be able to see, is this the direction that I was thinking of? And just double check that we're really going the way that we wanted to go. But I really love that metaphor.
Okay, great. Thanks again for your talk today. We really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun to do. And enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody.
Yep. So next up, we have JJ Asghar talking to us about lessons learned from cultivating open source projects and communities.